do the intro?
Sure.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
All right. Okay. So, welcome back to another episode of Pass the Gravy podcast. Today we thought it would be a good idea to talk about like our top 10 favorite movies and just have a discussion about like what movies inspire us and like just what our favorites are and kind of what and like then you'll have like a better understanding of what our taste is whenever we talk about movies in the future. So, do you want to start with your number 10, or do you want me to start with my number 10?
Um, you go ahead and start with number 10.
Okay, so, my number 10 is Scott Pilgrim. Scott Pilgrim Saves the World, because that movie, like I remember I had heard someone mention it before, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll try it out. And then like one day after school, I just got on Netflix and I looked it up, and it like has such a weird like vibrant exuberance with it because it has like a really good pacing and really creative editing, which is like one of like Edgar Wright's directing style is like one of my new like whenever if I ever see like Edgar Wright's name on a movie, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have to watch it, because every time I do I just feel very refreshed after watching it, because like that I think that's a really good word to describe his style of making movies is very fresh, because like you watch the movie and at the end you're like, oh my gosh, like was I really sitting there for an hour and a half, because it just flies by, and
Mm-hmm.
like all of his characters are really easily relatable, and also the movie is just hilarious, and it's also like a very deeply like nerdy movie because as I have all the references, like just like the X-Men patch on Scott's coat, and just like the whole premise of him having to fight all the evil ex-boyfriends so he can date Ramona. I don't know. I think it's a very entertaining and fresh movie. So, all right. What about you? What's your number 10?
I put Dead Poet Society, and um, yeah, it's a great movie, and I really like it a lot. And I kind of feel bad about ranking it at number 10, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Ranking these movies is really hard, and the order switches a lot for me.
Yeah, me too. And like sometimes the movies that aren't even in the top 10, like maybe by tomorrow they'll be in like the top 5.
Yeah,
So it just switches so much.
yeah. Then do you want to tell your number 9, or do you want me to go first?
Uh, I'll go ahead. My number 9 is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because I like that was like one of the first Western movies that I actually just sat down and watched.
Mm-hmm.
And like now like I'm a huge fan of Clint Eastwood because the movie is just really intense, and it's pretty much because he's very intense whenever he's acting,
Yeah.
and also like all of the acting in that movie is pretty great. Like I can't like the bad guy. I think his name's like Angel Face or whatever. He doesn't kill as many people as like Clint Eastwood's character, but he's considered the villain, and he's really good at it.
Yeah.
Cause like, and then I don't remember the Mexican guy's name, but he also gives a very good performance. Like he's in like a church talking to, it's like either it's his brother or something that's like become a priest, and he's like talking about all the bad things he's done, and he like breaks down in tears. It's a very long movie, but it's definitely worth it for the final scene when they have the standoff.
Isn't
Yeah, I think
isn't the bad guy in that movie? He was like he helped in the second one. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, the Dollars trilogy. I think in the second one, that's the one that you're referring to.
Yeah. That's a good
But-
trilogy. I liked watching those
Mhm.
movies. My number 9. If I'm being serious, it would be Rocky 1. But if I'm going away from being more serious, it'd be Rocky 4. Because I like Rocky 4 better than Rocky 1 just because it's cheesy. But Rocky 1 is also very, very good. So,
See, I based my list on like if you asked me what I wanted to watch right now,
mhm.
and also like kind of like what like kind of a consensus on like what my favorite movies are. So it's kind of a mix of both.
Yeah.
But Rocky 4 is amazing though. But all right, what are we? Are we on number 8?
We are on 8.
All right, my number 8 is Lawrence of Arabia.
Lawrence, yeah, that's a good one.
And like, I kind of like how you said earlier, I kind of feel bad about placing it so like low on the list. But I mean, by the time like in like an hour, it could be my number 2 or something. But I think it's because like on the American Film Institute, it's categorized under like the epic genre, and I think that might be like my second favorite type of movie, because like you just have these really big stories with lots of characters and huge set pieces, and like you just watch the movie like, and if you have all these actors riding on horses across the desert, you think, man, that must have been really hard to get all of those people together to ride. And just like the performance of the actor who plays Lawrence is just very intriguing.
Yeah.
It's a deeply like beautiful and enchanting movie. Like I think I've talked about this before, but like he could be like walking across the desert, and for some reason my eyes are just glued to the scene. It's a very interesting movie.
Yeah. For number 8, I have Braveheart, and that movie, it's pretty good. I like it a lot. It made me cry at the end, and Mel Gibson does a good job in that movie. So that's my number 8.
I've never seen Braveheart.
Yeah. Well, it's a good movie. I highly recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Is it like on Amazon or something?
No, I own the movie. That's how I saw
okay.
it. So, but you could probably borrow it. It's really good.
Once the corona goes away.
I could just drive over to her house, drop it off, spray it with Lysol, and just like leave it on the front porch, and walk away.
My parents were like, "Who was that?" And I was like, "That was the movie. That was the movie fairy. He's come to bless the house." Okay, that was off topic. Okay, my number 7 is American Graffiti, which is the movie that George Lucas made before he made Star Wars. I think it's like the only non-Star Wars movie he's directed. I'm probably wrong, but like that's the only other movie that comes to mind. And it's like about like early 60s, like George Lucas had this obsession with cars whenever he was like a teenager, and it's about, okay, well, the story is that it's about these 2 like high school seniors, and it's the last day of summer, and the next morning they're gonna have to get on a plane to go to college, and it literally takes place in that one night. And it's kind of the one character who's supposed to be more reminiscent of like George Lucas. Like he kind of goes to all these different places in town that like kind of remind him of home, and he's debating on whether or not he should leave just because it's a long ways away. But then his friend is debating on whether or not he should leave because he'll be like leaving his girlfriend and all his friends and stuff. And actually it's the movie where Harrison Ford and George Lucas met.
Yeah.
And it's just a really interesting movie, just because you kind of get a look it's a more of an accurate look at what life was really back in the early '60s. And I don't know, I really enjoy it. It had a lot of great music because I'm just into like Beach Boys and like the Beatles and Elvis. But yeah, that's my number 7. What's your number 7?
It's either the first or the second Pirates of the Caribbean. I couldn't decide between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
But those movies, like Jack Sparrow, is I really enjoy the character of Jack Sparrow, just because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't seem like he knows what he's doing, but like he gets away with all this ridiculous stuff, and it's so well planned out, the shots and everything, and the way just his schemes are so brilliant, and I really enjoy watching it. So that's why I have it at 7.
Like the first one, I think is the best, and it's also the most fun. I think, like story-wise.
Yeah.
It also has a great theme.
Mhm.
Like sometimes it'll get stuck in my head. Like I'm not even a huge Pirates of the Caribbean fan, but like sometimes I'll just be sitting like in class, and for some reason it will just get stuck in my head. I'm like, man, why am I thinking about Jack Sparrow in the middle of history class? I'm like, man, what the heck's going on? But yeah. My number 6 is Spider-Man 2, which is a movie that I talked about extensively at the favorite superhero movies episode. So if you haven't seen that, you should go watch it, because then you can hear me rant about it for a really long time. But in short, I like it a lot. I think it's the best Spider-Man movie, and possibly one of the best superhero movies. But okay.
Yeah.
So what's your number 5?
6. We're on 6.
Oh yeah, number 6. Yep.
My number 6 is The Patriot, another Mel Gibson film, and
Mm-hmm.
that might have been my first R-rated movie. Maybe.
Is that the movie with Harrison Ford in it?
No, it's got Mel Gibson and Heath Ledger in it.
Okay.
It's about the Revolutionary War, and it's just a really good movie. I really enjoy watching it, and I find myself in the mood to watch it a lot.
What's the story? I've never heard of it.
So Mel Gibson's the main character, and the British come over to his house. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what they're doing. It might be collecting attacks, or maybe it's to get them enrolled in the British military or something. But the Mel Gibson's, it's not his youngest. I think it's his second oldest son. Really wants to follow his older brother into the militia to fight against the British. And so when he sees the British messing around with his family, he tries to attack. He tries to attack the British military leader, and he ends up getting killed. And so because of that, Mel Gibson's character wants to get revenge, and so he goes and takes out like a whole troop of the British, and in this really intense scene, and all he uses is an axe, I'm pretty sure, and then he has his youngest sons using rifles. It's really intense and really cool. But then he builds up his own militia and starts fighting the British around using guerrilla warfare and stuff. It's really good.
That's cool.
So yeah, that's my number 6.
Okay. My number 5 is Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, because you can't really watch the first one without watching the second one, and vice versa. And it's actually, I think it was my first Quentin Tarantino movie, and it is so great. It's like a mixture of like a superhero western samurai movie, and it's really enchanting to watch because there's very like quick cuts and very interesting editing, and it has an amazing soundtrack because like you'll just be watching a scene and some like amazing music will just start playing out of nowhere and it will sync up perfectly with the actions of the characters, and it has the coolest fight scenes I think I've ever seen in any movie ever. But yeah, that's my number five. What's your number five, Nathan?
My number five is What's Eating Gilbert Grape with Johnny Depp
Hmm.
and Leonardo DiCaprio. And DiCaprio's performance in that movie is absolutely amazing. And Johnny Depp does a really good job too. Um, it's just, it's one of those movies where, like, if I have to be in the mood to watch it, but you know, it's heartwarming and it's just really good. Great acting. That's why I have it ranked so high is the acting in it. So, what's your number four?
My number four is Marriage Story,
Yeah.
which was my first Noah Baumbach movie, and I think the first, like, I don't know if it's like 10 minutes, the scene where it's literally the first thing you see is Adam Driver describing Scarlett Johansson's character, and then Scarlett Johansson like explain like describing Adam Driver's character
Yes.
and like why they love each other. Like, oh my gosh, and this is the most heartwarming thing. And also what makes that scene also work is that it has very like simple slow music, kind of like in Pixar's Up, and it just like it's so heartwarming to see like from these two different perspectives, because the whole movie is about perspectives, just the way it's shot, like the courtroom scene and stuff,
Yeah.
just how it's shot, because Noah Baumbach has like a very like simplistic way that he shoots movies, I've noticed, and just how they describe each other, and then it cuts, and then they're in a divorce like counseling session, and like your heart was warmed up. You're like, okay, we're gonna watch a sweet romance story about this small family, but then it cuts and they're getting divorced, and it's so strange because the movie is about perspective. You're tempted to take sides in the movie, but
Yeah.
honestly, they're both in the wrong. I mean, it's not like Adam evil or Scarlett Johansson did everything out of spite. Like, it's so tempting that to want to take sides on whoever you're watching, because whoever you're watching seems like the one that's in the right.
Yeah.
But it's not like that, and it's like that with most divorces. It's just a very heartbreaking movie because you can tell that they still really care and love for each other. Like, I know I'm kind of talking a lot, but like one of my favorite scenes is whenever they're in like a weird court document thing, and they're sitting down at the table and they're about to order like lunch or something, and everybody at the table orders their food except for Adam Driver's character, and he's like struggling looking at the menu because it's like really fancy food, and like earlier in the movie that you see that he's more into like pizza
Mhm.
and that kind of stuff, and he's struggling to find out what he wants. And then Scarlett Johansson's character's like, okay, let me see the menu, and she like pulls it over and she starts reading it, and she's like, okay, well, he'll have the Greek salad without anchovies, or she says something like that. And like, so you can like, there's these little tidbits in the movie that makes you think, okay, maybe they'll get back together, like they still love each other and they still want to make it work. And it's such a heartbreaking movie, but yeah, that's
I also
that's my that's my number four.
Yeah, that's a good one. I really like the opening scene and how it relates to the end scene where he's reading the note or the letter that she made for him.
Mm-hmm.
That got me.
Because she was so reluctant to read it in the beginning of the movie,
Yeah,
but
that's a really good movie. That was number four, right?
yeah.
Okay, so for number 4, I have Good Will Hunting. And that is such an emotionally intense movie. And Matt Damon and Robin Williams do such a great job in that movie. And golly, I just love it. It's great. Enough said.
I haven't. I watched like the first 30 minutes of it, but I did read quite a bit of the screenplay, and it's like really well written.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed watching the. I enjoyed reading the screenplay, but I mean, I think it was. Like from what I saw, I think it was really great. And like, didn't Matt Damon make that whenever he like his senior year of college too?
It was both Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. They had been working on that for a while, I'm pretty sure, before. And then they finally got the chance to do it. And it's really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. But also Robin Williams has a great performance in that movie.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's so well made, and it's great. So what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Rocky.
Mm-hmm.
And out of all the Rocky and Creed movies, I was really tempted to put the first Creed movie, because I think Ryan Coogler is like a really, I think he makes very like entertaining and action-packed movies like Black Panther. But the one that hits me the hardest is the first Rocky. And I don't really know why, because like I enjoy watching Creed and like Rocky 4 more, but there's just like if you were to ask me like, hey, which Rocky movie do you want to watch, I would 9 times out of 10 probably say Rocky. And just the story in general, because it's so American, because it's just about this guy he's literally a bum, you know, and he doesn't really think there is more to life until he is given this opportunity, and like he starts being trained by Mick, and he goes and he starts dating Adrian. And so then he like kind of like gets his head out of his butt, and he's like, okay, well there's more to life now. There's stuff that I need to do. I want to be the best. And he kind of like like if you look at his apartment, it's this crappy tiny apartment, and like he redeems himself, and he doesn't win the fight at the end, but he is there, and he doesn't give up till the end whenever he does lose, but in like spirit he's won the fight. And it's just so inspiring. Like when like the exact song is like The Final Bell, but like sometimes I'll listen to that on like YouTube, and I will like almost cry because it's just so triumphant. Like it's so amazing. And also the Rocky theme is amazing, but like The Final Bell, that song like almost makes me cry every time I hear it. It's just so good. But yeah, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is Saving Private Ryan. And this movie, the ending of it makes me cry every time I watch it. It's so good, and I think it's also a good movie. Like if you really want to see what it was like in World War II, especially the beginning scene on D-Day. It's supposed to be really close to what D-Day was actually like. So it's supposed to be very accurate to World War II, and the story is really simple, and the performances are great, and you know how much I love watching World War II movies, so
yeah,
I say it a lot.
Quite a bit.
So yeah, that's my number 3. Down to number 2.
All right, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Return of the King. And That
Okay.
the reason I say that is because Lord of the Rings, I feel like, is the perfect trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
and Return of the King, it's exciting, the action's good, and the ending, especially, I feel is a perfect way to end off the to end the trilogy. So,
Mm-hmm. The ending of that movie always makes me cry.
oh yeah, me too.
There's never been a time that I've watched it and I haven't like bawled.
I'm like Charlie from Marriage Story. I cry easily in movies.
I I cried 8 times. Oh, I cried 8 times too. I wonder if it was the same 8 times. That, just how he says that is like, yeah, that's gonna be me as a parent. And I'm like, I cried 8 times. Oh, me too. But
Yeah.
but
So what's yours?
my num my number two is the movie Cool Hand Luke, and I like it was a like I always go back and forth between my number two, my number one pick, because Cool Hand Luke, it's a very simple story, but like if you look at the story, it's very simple. But if you look at the character of Lucas Johnson, it's very intriguing and kind of puzzling because because he'll be asked why he does things and he'll be like, "Oh, well, I'm just bored." And he's like he's because if you look at his character, okay, like he's a veteran, thing really stupid in the beginning of the movie. Like, doesn't like why would he cut the heads off parking meters? And he just says, "Oh, well, I wasn't thinking at all. I suppose I was just bored." And then like he eats like the 50 eggs, and he's like, "Oh, well, I had nothing better to do." And it's like just how confusing that is. Like, okay, well, he has nothing better to do. Like, is he truly just bored, or is there something else there? And then like the scene where his mom visits, and like you just kind of dig into a little bit more of his backstory. And I really like Paul Newman's performance because like he's very soft spoken, and when like and what he says is like seems very simple, but if you really like kind of dig into it, you're like, also the beginning scene where like it just bursts to life and you see the parking meter, and it just like has like that really interesting editing for the beginning of the movie.
Hmm.
And just the theme song alone, like that will get stuck in my head literally every other day. That like slow guitar theme, I don't know, it's one of those movies that like once I start watching, it's really hard for me to get my eyes like unglued from the movie.
I haven't seen that movie. Is it on Netflix?
It used to be on, it was on Netflix like last year, and that's how I watched it because
Uh-huh.
Mrs. Brown, I came home, like went back to my room and I just started watching it, and like I feel like those are like when I discover the movies that I love the most, it's usually when I'm having a bad day and I just click something that I've heard about. It's one of those classic movies that I think everyone should watch at some point.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's my number two. Are we down to number one,
Number one.
or is it saving? Okay, what's your number one?
My number one is Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope.
Oh, me
Yeah.
too.
I,
Yeah.
I
When when you said Return of the King was your number two, and I was like, oh, I know what number one is. It has to be Star
it
Wars.
definitely does. That's the only, I think those two are the only consistent ones on my list. It's always Return of the King and Star Wars at
Hmm.
1 and 2. That's the only unchanging movies on my list. So,
Yeah, I feel the same way with Cool Hand Luke and Star Wars, but I mean we've talked very extensively about our love for A New Hope. So, do you want to talk about it again, or just be like, "Haha, go watch the Star Wars ranking episode"?
Oh, go watch the Star Wars ranking episode. Is that one still up? I don't know if that was that one that we had on the that we recorded, or did we live stream that one? I can't remember.
We might have live streamed. Let me look.
No, that wasn't, because that was What If We Were in Charge of Lucasfilm. So, yeah,
Oh, okay.
that one's not there yet, and hopefully we'll get it soon. But
Okay, well, I mean, I'm down to talk about A New Hope because I feel very passionately about it.
I mean, why not? Let's go for it.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Star Wars: A New Hope. I remember the first time I watched it. I think I explained this in the other video, but like I like the story, so I'm gonna tell it again. So, I literally remember I was 5 years old, and like back then, like we couldn't like really go buy movies or anything, so my dad got it from the library. And I remember I saw the cover and I just looked at Princess Leia and I was like, wow, this looks really dumb. Why does she have cinnamon rolls on the side of her head? And my dad was like, he's like, no, just like, that's a stupid reason not to watch it. Let's just watch it because you'll like it. I know you will. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I literally remember sitting there on the couch and just like it made me jump. Like it freaked me out just because it comes to life and you just hear these horns blasting, and I was freaked out, and I had to ask my dad to read like the opening crawl and like just to like understand what was going on. But if anything, I was even more confused, and because of I was so confused, I wanted to figure out the movie even more. And the opening scene with them fighting in the hallway, I used to reenact that scene in the hallway of my house. And just Darth Vader scared the crap out of me too, because you have this amazing music. And I think that's one of the most underrated things that I feel like is not talked about whenever people talk about movies, is the music. Because it either it has to be really good for people to talk about it, like Star Wars, Jurassic Park, even like the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack. Like it has to be amazing for people to talk about it. And I think like Star Wars it's kind of like how we were talking about whenever we talk about Lord of the Rings, where it immerses you into the story, and also like it sets up these characters so well. Like Darth Vader's theme is perfect for him. Like I can't imagine it being any different, because it's deep, it's intimidating, and like every time you hear it, even people that have never seen Star Wars know Darth Vader's theme and the opening crawl theme. And yeah, that's just like the bare surface of my passion for the movie. But yeah.
Yeah. A New Hope, it didn't used to be my favorite movie, because I don't know, I kind of thought it was boring when I was a little kid. But I still liked it a lot. It was definitely one of my favorite movies. It just wasn't at number one. But then just this year in mythology class, when we were going over the hero's journey and we watched Star Wars, you know, I was excited to watch it, but I wasn't going into that expecting to have this newfound love for Star Wars. And golly, I love that movie so much. Rewatching it in class, it really opened my eyes to how good that movie is. And it's not really boring. I don't think it's boring anymore. And gosh, it's just so amazing. Everything
Especially
about it
whenever,
is so good.
especially whenever it's broken down,
Mhm.
like the hero's journey, like in middle school, like summer school mythology class. Because I remember whenever we did that in Armstrong's class, and like that's when I kind of like understood it.
Mhm.
And I feel like you said, like whenever you were a little kid, it wasn't your favorite. I felt the same way because once I watched the rest of the movies, I enjoyed Return of the Jedi the most
Yeah.
because I thought it looked the coolest. But like once it's broken down in front of you, like okay, this is the hero's journey, this is how it works, and this is how storytelling works, and like it just kind of opens your eyes to it. But yeah.
Armstrong Comics, this feels like a pity shout out since I'm listening. It is definitely not. The movie is just uh, it's so good. I love that movie so much, and it just gets better each time that I watch it. So that's my number one.
hmm
All right, so what's next?
Man. Okay, well, I've also come up with several questions. Not several, just a few. But so like for you, what do you think is like the most the most inspiring movie? Like whenever you watch it, you're like, okay, yeah, like I want to be a filmmaker. Like you just feel like suddenly energized to make something, whether it be to write or to storyboard or anything like that.
Okay, so the movie that got me into wanting to do film as a professional career is the 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 Lord of the Rings, specifically the Fellowship of the Ring. Uh, so what my dad did when he decided we were old enough to watch that was he sat us down Sunday afternoon after church, and we would put in the extended edition of each Lord of the Rings movie. And so we watched the Fellowship of the Ring, and I saw that there was behind the scenes stuff in there. And I had, as a kid, I would go onto StarWars.com and watch behind the scenes of everything, and I thought it was very interesting. But it didn't necessarily want me to do film. But when I watched the behind the scenes of the Lord of the Rings, I saw that everybody was having so much fun, and it it, it wasn't just the fun, it was the whole creative process too, because it dives really deep into the costumes and the sound design and everything that happens in the filmmaking process. And just learning about that got me so interested. I wanted to do those things that they were doing, that I was seeing on the TV. And so that's what really got me interested. So the Lord of the Rings movies were what mainly inspired me. And then,